Hey guys, it's Rush. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. This video today, I'm talking about 6-button fight pads. Particularly, I want to talk about the blueprint of what makes a well-rounded or a good, the best 6-button fight pad you can get for whatever console you're on, for fighting games basically. So at the moment, in my opinion, there isn't really a well-rounded or the perfect pad. This that you see right here is something that I've been aware of for a while. It's my dream controller, I guess you could say. But I want to talk you through the design. I mean, the design it's super basic, but the fact that manufacturers get this wrong so many times, it's just Omega facepalm. It's the worst, absolutely the worst. So at the moment, I'm using the B-Top. It is a 6-button fight pad. It has a circular D-pad. It's a very small controller and it has tiny shoulder buttons. It does have 4 shoulder buttons, you can see there, but they are tiny. My main gripe with this pad is the fact that the shoulder buttons are so small. The pad is small. It's very thin as well. It has no weight to it. So the more I've used it, those are my main complaints. This is a very old control pad. It was built around the PS3 era. So you don't have a L3 and R3, it won't be 1000 hertz polling, but it's the fact that it's so small that makes it difficult to use. Also the D-pad's really good on this pad, but it is a little sensitive, so that's my one gripe with the D-pad. But this D-pad is very, very good. So this is why I recommend this pad for Street Fighter 6, but because of those negatives, it's what makes it not a good controller. So this beast of a controller is a Sanwa Direct fight pad. I use this for Tekken 8 and it again has a lot of great features, but some things that let this pad down. It's a 6-button fight pad. It actually has 7. It has a button at the very top, if you can see that. It has a very, very large D-pad. If you can see the D-pad, trying to get the light on it. So the D-pad is circular, but it has protruding up, down and left, right input. So it's a bit of a weird controller. I didn't really get on with this pad for Street Fighter 6, but more so because of the button mappings and these small buttons. The shoulder buttons are, sorry, let's get that in the angle. They're very big and that's great. That's what I love to see on a fight pad. This fight pad is good. What I like about it is the shape, the design. It's chunky, it's got weight to it, it's very thick as well, so you get a really good grip on it. The buttons, shoulders are great, but the face buttons are terrible. The D-pad probably isn't the best out of the bunch. For me, it's very weird. For Tekken, it's amazing. For Street Fighter, it's just not that great. So it is down to personal preference. But again, my point is these pads are just lacking somewhere. So you may be asking, what is the solution to this issue, these design flaws? And it is the blueprint that is here. It's a very simple diagram. The shape of the controller, it follows the same philosophy as the PlayStation control pad. So it has a large face area and then handles on either side. If you look at the top here, this is the top view of the controller where the shoulder buttons are. You can see it's quite a chunky controller, and I'd like to see that throughout the whole design. Obviously have the curvature in it for your hands to sit in the control pad, but having like a chunky end to it and a chunky top part, I know it sounds terrible, but that will allow you to get a good grip of the control pad. So the handles, the thickness and the weight to it. A controller that has weight will feel more stable in your hands, and people with smaller hands may say, well, that doesn't really suit me. It's true. I mean, there is a market for those types of pads, like the 8-bit Do, the M30, the B-Top as well. They're smaller control pads. They don't suit me and they don't feel that secure in my hands, whereas something like this is exactly what you want. So that's the design philosophy. Speaking about the thickness of the pad at the very top, this enables you to have chunky shoulder buttons. So your L1, your L2, your R1, your R2, not only are they chunky so you don't miss input, but having the space between them. On the B-Top, the amount of times, it's not super frequent, but it does happen, that I press both shoulder buttons at the same time because they're so close together and they're so thin. So that, again, it's two things: the thickness to get the grip on it, but also the shoulder button space. You know, you've got that real estate for those buttons. So that's the design of it. The D-pad itself, what I've noticed with D-pads on fight pads are the circular D-pad is the best one, but having a D-pad that's too small or too big does make a big difference. A big D-pad, in my opinion, leads to more input errors because you've got to move more than you actually wanted to move around, basically. So I would say a D-pad that is slightly bigger than the old Hori Fighting Commander. The old Hori Fighting Commander had a cross-shaped D-pad. That was quite small, so it was I say it was bad because it was a cross-shaped D-pad and it was small. Something slightly larger than that, but not too big, but having a circular D-pad as well. In my opinion, the best D-pads are the Sega Saturn style D-pads. So that's what you should shove in there. Like just do that. You can't go wrong. Something based on the Sega Saturn D-pad, it's perfectly fine. I actually bought a Victrix BFG controller for my Xbox, my son's Xbox. And what I liked about that controller is that the D-pads, you can actually change the D-pads themselves. So they'd actually disconnect. You can change them. And that's really good because if a D-pad doesn't feel quite good, but you like the controller, it gives you other options. And it's actually surprising how different the D-pads are. So if you change, I don't know, say you've got a disc-shaped one, say you've just got a cross-shaped one. I think in the Victrix you had like a diamond-shaped one or like a square-shaped one, which is very unusual. But they all felt different, and everyone has different preferences. Having the ability to customize the D-pad is even better from the perspective of replacement parts and just that customizability as well. So maybe that's a consideration. I don't think it's a super important thing, but that would be a nice thing. The next thing is the button configuration. This is something that really annoys me with manufacturers. I mentioned at the top, you've got L1, L2, R1, R2. On the face of the pad, you want your 4 core face buttons. So whether you're on Xbox or PlayStation or PC or whatever, you'll have 4 core buttons, but obviously a 6-button pad has 2 additional buttons. The 2 additional buttons should be L3 and R3. Sorry, you can tell I'm triggered by this. They should not be mapping these buttons to there. And when you flick the switch on the back, that then becomes this and you can't use them, or that becomes this and you can't use them. Just give the control pad the buttons we want. You don't need to mess around with anything. You've got your shoulder buttons, they're all there. You've got your 6 face buttons and your dedicated L3 and R3. And what I've seen on some control pads, I think this is, oh yeah, there you go. So this is an example. This is an 8-bit do pad, 8-bit do. But this is a really well designed pad. It's a very, very good controller. But you can see on the back of it, it's got the additional buttons. They're called paddles. So even just shut them in, just have the paddles, just have L3 and R3 on the back as well. That this is meant to be like a see-through type image. So the buttons on the back of the controller there, but you've got L3 and R3. And just have the settings for the control pad to turn this stuff off. If you don't want to use them or anything else, you switch it off through the software. It's dead easy. I just don't know why they overcomplicate the button configuration when it comes to these pads. Additional things that these controllers need. So configuration. The first thing I think that pads should have now is 1000 hertz polling. Hope you can see that. So it just means your response time of the controller is at its best. It seems to be the standard for control pads now, so that should be something that the pads should have. Second thing is wired. I mean, this is kind of obvious. I've heard wireless technology is on par with wired technology now. I don't know if that's actually true, but I want a wired control pad. I want to be able to plug it in. I don't want to worry about batteries running out. I want a direct connection to my device. That's a given. It should be wired. Third thing is software. So software to configure the buttons. So as I mentioned, you've got these additional paddles on the back. I probably would disable them because I will definitely press them by mistake. But being able to switch buttons around in the software is a really, really useful thing to have. Next one, this one really annoys me, and it is when they use triggers for the shoulder buttons. So a fire pad should be shoulder buttons only. It should not be triggers. No triggers, because it triggers me. I should have mentioned this before, is the face buttons. The face buttons should be of a decent size. The best face buttons I've ever used on any controller is the Fighting Commander, the old Hori Fighting Commander. They were nothing special. They weren't like micro switches or anything of that nature. They were just nice buttons. They were rounded. They had nice soft edges. They were of a good size, but they felt amazing. And that again is the blueprint. Just go for, decent sized, well spaced face buttons. I don't know what should I put here? I don't know. Nice face buttons, easy. Nice face buttons. Last but by no means least is the positioning of the D-pad and the face buttons. This should all be in alignment. You should not have the D-pad right up in the corner down there, the 6 buttons down there or up here. It should be nice and aligned. The face button should go right through the middle of the 6 buttons. I'd actually say the D-pad should be probably a little higher up. I'd say everything actually a bit higher up than this drawing, but having this a little positioned a bit higher, your thumbs will sit naturally on the D-pad and these buttons. This again is the Victrix BFG that I had. Lovely control pad, it was really well built, but when you use the 6-button module, the 6 buttons shifted downwards, so you'd have the original 4 face buttons, but when you put the 6-button module in, the additional buttons, I'll do it in a different color, they end up down here, which if you cover that, that's awful. Like it doesn't even really give it justice to show you how low it is because of the arrows there, but the buttons are like there and there. It doesn't sit in line with the D-pad. It's terrible. So that's something else that needs to be done. I feel, well, that's again a consideration. So I don't know, what would you call that? D-pad and buttons in line. Can you even read that on the screen? Just about. So that's the other thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. The design is there. Shape, weight, nice shoulder buttons, good button configuration. Follow that blueprint. You cannot go wrong. I don't know what it is. Just there's always something up with the 6-button control pads that I see released, and I get so excited when I see a new one. But I also know that I'm going to be disappointed. And when I use it, I'm like, yeah, it's just not right. The Hori Octa actually is built this way, but the problem with the Hori Octa is it has a trash D-pad. I don't know if the D-pad's better on the newer versions or the new, like the same version, but the new ones they're producing. But on paper, it's the best controller. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Have you found your dream pad? Am I talking crazy? Is this the wrong way to go about it? You let me know what you think in the comment section. But I appreciate your time as always. It's always fun to do these types of videos. And yes, I will catch you in the next video. Take care.